Today's readings, I'm really excited about being able to talk about them. They're basically about the unity that we have as a church and with the rest of our sisters and brothers in the human race, and how difficult that is at times. Times you feel like, what am I supposed to do with that one? How am I supposed to get along with them? And that's what these readings are addressing in our underlying unity. And so I heard a wonderful quote this week from Brene Brown. Some of you are familiar with her. You've listened to her. She's a PhD social worker who's involved mostly in research and speaking, writing. Just a wonderful, wonderfully insightful teacher about matters, especially on emotional intelligence and things like that. And she famously told her followers somewhere that she had just several reasons why she decided to return to church after being away from church for a long time. And I don't remember, there were just like 3 or 4, but one of them stuck out because it was so odd. She said, I wanted to be able to pass the peace at church. I wanted to do the sign of peace. And so people naturally were curious, like, why would that make you want to go to church? Like, that just doesn't sound like a winning argument to get up and go to church. And she said, well, I was noticing that when we're all driving around on the interstate or stuck in very heavy, congested traffic, it's so easy to pass the finger. So we all do that. And I found myself contemplating that, and I thought, what kind of world are we building if that's such an easy practice? There must be some place where there's a different kind of practice that points to a better world. So she wanted to come to pass the peace. And I love that story because it speaks to how really important things can be ritualized, to use a word that's often connected with religion, and I'm sorry if that messes up the meaning for you, but just some practice that we do regularly that tends to occasion some good thing happening. It's a way of not just waiting for good things to happen, because they will, once in a while some good thing will happen, but we can learn how to ritualize them so that they happen more often. And so I would like to point to, when I think about unity and what a struggle it is, whether I'm talking about the church, whether I'm thinking about the church or politics in our country or whatever it is, I'm just driven to pray. It's like I just need some source that feels like it's way beyond this mess that makes it very difficult for us to talk to each other on occasion. And so if I could unpack this ancient practice of prayer in what I hope is a very simple way, and in many ways we've unpacked it here, myself and other preachers, in similar fashion. So this isn't really new, but I'll try to say it in a new way so that it's somewhat fresh bread. The church is full of us broken people. And we can point to all kinds of examples of how it's a mess, And it's been a mess historically. Century after century, we can point to just times when it was just awful and did all the wrong things and pointed, in the wrong direction. But it's also true that in the middle of that great tradition, that long, long tradition, there have been many people who were faithful in meeting God in prayer. And many of these people wrote down in different parts of the world and in different centuries their testimony to what it was like to just be talking to God. And they all say the same thing. Even though they weren't talking with each other, because they were living in different places, in different times, But they say the same thing. And what they essentially say is if we can just still ourselves, just be quiet, and just kind of be, that what happens is if we can turn off our minds enough, the things that are writing, what we're supposed to do that day, or how I'm going to get back at so-and-so, or whatever. If we could just somehow put all those aside and just be still and just be open to, I'll call it what is. Just be open to what is. Then all of a sudden, this miracle tends to happen where we're kind of like, it's like being a human tree. And by that I mean, think of a tree that's plugged into the ground and is drawing all these nutrients from the ground. And not just the ground, but the sky, nourished by rain, nourished by sun. In other words, this is, we think it's like we're a human tree and we're open to how all of a sudden we're open to this realization that we really aren't giving ourselves to ourselves. Something else is nourishing us. Something else is allowing us to breathe, allowing our heart to beat, things we can't choose or not choose. We just simply are taking in this life as one big gift. And this otherness, this something other, I'll call it somethingness. Let's not use the word God because that brings in other images. Let's just say this somethingness or this someoneness that's apart from us that we start sensing is there. It feels personal. It feels like we're in a presence. And the presence can really make you feel still. The presence can make you feel like you just shouldn't move. And that's why people, like in the Old Testament and in other religions, will talk about just wanting to remove their shoes, like they feel like they're in some sacred, something's going on here. And that this is free. It just happens. And this is something that we can learn to do. Now, people who, through the centuries and all over the world, have taught this, have tried, like salesmen or saleswomen, they're trying to help us understand what they're talking about. So they use examples from our ordinary lives of how we know these things happen. Like when you look at a baby, if you're a parent or a grandparent, and you hold the baby, you're not thinking about your shopping list. You're just somewhere else. And you're stilled and you're stopped. That's it. That's not different than what I was talking about. It's very much the same. Or when you're with someone who's someone who you've loved for years and years and years, and they're dying. It's like that. It's a sacred thing. It's not time for you to be on your phone. You're just locked in a stillness. It's as if there is no time. Right? And we have these moments. We know what these moments are like. But we don't get to have them all the time. We feel like they just kind of come and go. This is why a lot of people like to hunt, because they're out in the woods and they see a deer and they just think it's so magnificent. Or they'll see the sun come up, or they just experience nature in such a way, or listen to a babbling brook, and they're just still. They're like, this is wonderful. But it's hard to know how to ritualize that unless you just go hunting all the time. And the genius of the world religions, really, including Christianity, is that there have been ways devised to be able to make that happen more often. Because when we're thrilled like that, we say, I wish I could live with this all the time. And there's an important reason to live it all the time. Besides just wanting it, besides just saying, this is great, I'd love to know it all the time. There's a much more important reason. And that is that life is really, really, really hard sometimes. And we just don't know how to take that next step. And I know we've all been there, where life just seems really complex. Or maybe it's church politics. Or maybe it's country politics in the United States. Or maybe it's family politics. And you just want to run away. You're just like, ugh, I don't want to be involved in all this. Life can be hard for all manner of reasons. Some mysterious, non-understandable disease that you're all of a sudden having to endure, or someone you love has to endure. And so, what these same people who all throughout time and all over the world say is that the beauty of these moments is when we realize that they are like a light to our difficult path. That this light belongs with the path. That's a huge insight they're trying to tell us. So it isn't meant to be the one time in 4 years you go hunting, or the one time or the 4 times in your life you held a baby that was connected to you. No, it can be more often than that, and it needs to be more often than that, because it has to be something that so lifts you up and ennobles you and fills you with this sense of everything is fine, and you are loved, and life is good, and you are being given the fullness of life. Those experiences are meant to be had enough of the time that it's a constant light for our path, which is difficult. That's what this is all about. We probably never get there where the light's on constantly. I don't know anyone who claims they're there. But you can see that that's the ideal, is that the light would be on all the time. I think most of us admit, we're not there. But we can be there more and more often. We can choose, like Brene Brown, to go to church because that's where they pass the peace. I've been flipping people off all week long. I'm just, for 2 minutes in church, I'm going to go around and say, whatever happens to you this week, God loves you. You may have darted in front of me on the highway. Peace to you. Peace to you. You may have forgotten your directional signal. You know what? Peace. Peace. Just some place where that is happening, we ritualize it and bring it about. But we also bring about this greater sense, and this is why church is so fragile. It's like this beautiful flower that's so easily crushed. Worship is a ritual. So if we go into it with the heart, it means everything. If we don't go into it with the heart, it means nothing. It just doesn't do it. But as the psalmist said in tonight's responsorial psalm, let us go into the presence of God together. And let's do it with thanksgiving for all that we receive. And let's do it with love that comes out of our heart. Thank you. Thank you for loving me. We love you. To do something like that is to ritualize these moments that otherwise would just be once in a while. And by ritualizing them, we turn on the light. And in the middle of a difficult life where it's sometimes hard to know, how am I supposed to get along with these people? In whatever the setting, the light goes on. I don't know about you, but every time I pray about a situation like that, I just find possibilities show up. I find my heart viewing things differently. I find myself coming at things from a different perspective. And that's what this experience is meant to be.